When a people are enslaved, as long as they hold fast to their language, it is as if they had key to their prison. जय हिंद, आप सभी को मेरा नमस्कार. Let me tell you a story. The title of the story is The Last Lesson by Alphonse Daudet. It's a French story by French writer. The story is set and based on Franco-Prussian War. The Franco-Prussian War was fought during 1870 and 71. Franco refers to France and Prussian forces were a combined alliance of Germany, Poland and Austria led by Bismarck. The result of Franco-Prussian War fought was that France was defeated by Prussian forces. And as it happens that when one country gets defeated by other country, so there is economic problem, the social liberty, their culture, their language is taken away and imposed by the invading nation. The theme of the story is language chauvinism, the implications of language chauvinism. The story also talks about the common human nature of procrastination, procrastinating something for the future course of action. Same thing we can say that we should never put off until tomorrow what we can do today. The story is a realization on the part of French people that opportunity should not be taken for granted. The story is about a school, and that school was in the districts of Alsace and Lorraine. The districts of Alsace and Lorraine came into the hands of Prussian forces after the defeat of France by Prussian forces. The story talks about the impact of the defeat of France by the Prussian forces and what effect did it have on the teaching and learning in the schools of Alsace and Lorraine of France. The main character of the story is Franz, a student, a young student, and he is the narrator of the story as well. Franz was a casual student who didn't show much interest in learning French language, nor did he have enough respect for his teacher M. Hamel. M. Hamel, the protagonist of the story, we can say he was a French teacher full of patriotism, service, full of dedication and devotion for his professionalism, for his career as being a teacher. Now, let's get into the story and let us see how the story proceeds. Franz is the narrator of the story. One fine morning, he starts for his school, and the previous day there was given some assignment, some kind of work to be done, to be prepared, and the topic was participle. But as we had seen that Franz was a very casual student who was not serious in learning French language, so obviously he had not done it. And M. Hamel was a kind of strict teacher. He wanted to make sure that students learn the things taught in the class. Franz had not done the work, so he was fearing some kind of scolding and punishment, and as a result he decided to stay away out of the school on that day. The morning was a pleasant morning, birds were chirping, and the Prussian forces, they were doing marching and drilling, and all this activity had more temptation than learning the rules of participle. But after a while there was a change of attitude, and then Franz decided that he would go to school. He starts running for school. On the way, there lay a town hall. In that town hall, there was a bulletin board, and all the bad news of France getting defeated by Prussian forces, orders and draft, all that bad news, ill news came from that bulletin board. And on his way to school, Franz saw a big crowd before the bulletin board, and then he wondered what next. What next disaster was waiting, and why the people were in front of the bulletin board. But since he was getting late for school, so he had no time to wait and stop and to learn more about the crowd and the bulletin board. Now when he moved next, there was Washer, the blacksmith. The blacksmith and his apprentice, they were also trying to read out from the bulletin board, and then the blacksmith called out at Franz and asked him that why he was running. He could make to school in enough of time. This Franz did not understand because he knew that he was already late, but he could sense that the blacksmith was taunting at him, and he was making fun of him. Still, he moved ahead. He had a plan since he was late for the school. So he had a plan, because that in the noise and hustle bustle and the noise and commotion of the school, he would take a chance and he would sneak into the class without getting noticed. That was his plan for the day. But when he entered the campus on that day, the campus was not like any other day. There was quiet. It was like a Sunday morning. There was no hustle and bustle. There was no sound of the students reading in unison and teachers tapping the ruler. It was all around quite like Sunday morning. When Franz stood at his gate, because the plan did not work, he had a plan to sneak into the class without getting noticed, but he was standing at the door, and the teacher, Hamel, very politely called him and asked him, "Franz, come inside. We were going to start the lesson without you." Hardly he got over his fear and nervousness, and he made himself seated, and then he noticed certain changes into the classroom. He saw that the back benches of the classrooms were occupied by the village folk. So from that village folk, from the group, there was old Hauser. He was carrying an old primer, and there was mayor and postmaster as well. The other change he noticed coming to the class, he saw that his teacher Hamel was in his best uniform, formal uniform, which he wore only on inspections and prize days. But on that day, it was neither a prize day nor inspection. So why he was wearing that his most favorite formal suit, in which that comprised hat, coat, why he was wearing into that dress. And after a few moments passed, and Hamel made an announcement. He made the announcement that order had come from Berlin, and from the next day there would be taught German in place of French. This was not a mere announcement, but a kind of thundering. It sounded to his ears, and then he could in a moment understood that why did the blacksmith ask him not to run, and why there had assembled a crowd before the bulletin board, and what the village elderly people were doing into the classroom, and why Hamel was in his best of uniform. And on that day, Hamel was looking very serious. Though he was serious in all days, but particularly on that day, he was looking very serious, and he was being very particular about his teaching. It appeared that he wanted to teach everything he knew only on that day, because there would not be a second day for learning and teaching of French language. When it came the turn for Franz to read out and present himself on the topic participle, he got confused just in the opening words and he could not speak even few words. He felt so embarrassed for not learning French and spending times outside and not taking his subject seriously. Here M. Hamel did not scold him because he could see that Franz himself he was realizing, and it was more than his corporal punishment. M. Hamel called to the people and said, blamed the villagers that the villagers preferred keeping their children engaged in the village work over teaching them to the school. M. Hamel here also took the blame on himself because sometime when he had to go for fishing, he gave the day off, and sometime he also sent the children for watering the plants in his garden. On that day, M. Hamel brought notebooks with the beautifully written on the cover page, Alsec Franz, and he distributed the notebooks to all the children. First, M. Hamel taught grammar and then writing and then history. He was touching one topic to another, and though he was emotional, but still on that day he did not want to miss out even a single second, and he wanted to dedicate his every moment of time that he had in his hand in teaching the students his subject. He appealed to the people that language is the most beautiful language in the world and it's the most logical language, and people should stand and guard it. He said that a language is your key to prison. For the time moment we might have become slave, our country might have been taken over by the German people, but M. Hamel appealed to the people that if you practice, if you guard your language, your culture, then in no time in future they would make themselves free and no foreign power can keep them slave for long. And by coming to this time, his voice became very choked. He was getting very emotional because he had been rendering his service as being a French teacher for the last 40 years. Nothing has changed in 40 years except for the trees which he himself planted. It had grown large and the benches, they had worn out and it had become smooth. Apart from that, there was no change in his attitude. He had been rendering his service of being a French teacher for all these 40 years with the same dedication and with the same devotion. Coming towards the last end of the period, his voice choked and he was unable to speak. He mounted on his chair, came to next to the blackboard, and with a piece of chalk he wrote on the blackboard, "Vive la France," long live France, and with the body gestures he dismissed the class. So that's the first story, last lesson from the book Flamingo of class 12th. There could never be a better start of any book of such board class significance as it is class 12th than this last lesson. Let me know in the comment box how did you like the story, how it will help you in your examination. And here I would say one thing, it is not just for the class 12th students. Storytelling, I prefer when people sometimes they come and discuss that how they can improve their communication skill. So I discuss with them so many ways, but the one way which I find the most important and the easy way of enhancing your communication skill, getting the confidence for public speaking, is storytelling. Jai Hind.